30 plus behavioral interview questions that you guys have asked about for the QA and an SDET positions. With the 3 experienced QA engineers, automation engineers, and even managers who are going to answer those questions so you would know how to answer them the best way possible. My name is Sergey Kromchenko. I've been rocking the QA world for more than 9 years, and today I'm delivering a promise. You guys previously have asked for more mock-up interviews specifically for behavioral questions because these types of questions are asked during every single interview, because regardless if you are manual or an automation engineer, a QA engineer, or even if you are a dev, everyone wants to know how are you going to behave in a team? How are you going to be collaborating with other team? Anyways, let's get directly into it. But before we do that, if you guys are enjoying this video, don't forget to hit the big fat thumb up button and the subscribe button below. And also, if you want to learn more about our school or you want to talk to me directly, feel free to leave a comment below or to follow the link in the description at Codemify.com. Let's go! Hey everyone, welcome back!
What's going on, guys?
Super positive. Alrighty, well, we're seeing Ella and Anton here. Those are our superstars from the YouTube. You guys have probably seen their videos, and you will possibly see a link right here, or maybe right there, or somewhere there, to see their previous videos. And also going to add it to the description of this video. Anyways, Ella, you want to, since it's a March 8th and you're the lady, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Ella. I'm actually live in LA. I took your course, Sergey, more than a year ago, and I'm actually working right now as a QA at the company calling Go Guardian. Pretty happy where I'm at, pretty happy with QA. Yeah, so.
Coolio. Thank you. And Anton?
Well. My name is Anton. I think some of you who've been watching this channel already know me, but I'm also an ex-student of Sergey's, and I've been working as a QA as well. So I think you can probably watch some other videos. You'll get, the same spiel. But yeah, that's pretty much it about me.
Awesome. All right. Well, since we've already met everyone, let's probably get started. This is going to be a behavioral questions interview for the not necessarily manual, but also for a key automation position, because you'll always get the behavioral questions. We'll not go into technicals, but I guess it will probably be mostly for manual since it will be not related to automation. But when you go for automation interview questions, you will possibly get these as well. So let's get started.
I don't think it's possible. You would most definitely get them because even from my experience going through the interviews, you go through different rounds, and one might be technical, the next one might be about behavioral, one next one might be about product, right? So you need to have that kind of rounded knowledge about it. So
that's actually
most definitely get it.
Yeah, it's actually so true. Even me going for senior manager, engineering manager positions, I would also get a lot of those, actually mostly those. So let's get started. First one, who wants to ask it? Because you guys got a list of questions as well, right?
Yes, sir.
We do.
All right. Well,
you want to do the deed and ask, or like to answer?
Well, I can probably ask all of them. Let's get started. Cool. Can you describe a time when you had to work with a difficult team member, and how did you handle it? You can volunteer. Ella, let's go.
I just recently actually had an issue with one of our dev, and basically it was just delay with some of the work that we were promised for QA, and I was not really happy with everything, how it's going to, how it was handled. So I think the right way to handle those is, first of all, is be polite and friendly. And definitely if you have an issue with a specific person, don't be like passive aggressive towards them. But what I did, I actually reached out to my manager and just let them know, like, hey, I have the situation. I'm not really sure like how to properly handle it, but can you maybe give me an advice, or maybe talk to him, but kind of like we need to specify the process and make sure, we're hitting our deadlines. So, but again, I was like, I don't want to get anybody in trouble or anything. I just want to make sure that the issue will be handled.
Definitely agree with that. I got nothing to add. Anton?
Yeah, no, that's definitely the right way to go about it. One of the main things is not to take work stuff personally, right? And handle it in that professional manner. And really, if you see that it's not whatever they're doing might be harming the productivity of your team or even the company, you approach it in a particular way where you mention certain things that are solely professional related and leave all the personal things aside from it, and just mention those and kind of approach it from that way.
Yep. And actually, I can actually answer this question in a really cool way, because once upon a time, I had an issue with my manager and I had to deal with it. Very unusual situation, but it could possibly happen to everyone. So I've tried to talk to the person. The person had something inside of the job. So we couldn't resolve an issue. So I had to talk to his manager multiple times until the issue was finally resolved. And this is kind of an unusual situation, I would say, because I wouldn't see how someone would have a problem with a manager, but it happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have to follow the chain of command, I guess. If it's a problem with your manager, you go to his manager. I mean, if you have, for example, a QA lead in your team, you're probably first going to go to QA team if you're having issues with the coworker. So I think you definitely need to go one level higher. But I also want to mention that I think a lot of people with our mentality from people from different countries, that we feel bad when we go to our manager to tell that we're having issues with someone, which is totally fine. That's okay. Like, you're not doing anything bad. Just stay professional and stay polite, so just want to mention it.
Yep, for sure. And try to figure it out on your own. Try to talk to the person the way I did multiple times. But if you're hitting the wall and there is no way out, well, if you gotta go one level up, as Ella mentioned, you gotta go up. Coolio. All right, let's get to the second one. How do you approach testing requirements that are incomplete or unclear? This is actually a really good interview question for the newbies. I would say for the junior to mid-level, but for senior level as well.
Yeah, I mean, I can go ahead actually answer that one. And it's funny because Sharon was working today, and she turned around and she says, "Hey, if it's safe to assume if the bug is on happening on like Chrome, is it safe to assume that it's on like other browsers as well?" And I was like, you never assume as an engineer, right? So that's kind of the most important thing to take away from it. So whenever you have some sort of like difficulty understanding the requirements, the worst thing you can do is, say, "Oh yeah, I thought that's, this is it," right? And then down the road, you ship something to the production, and then, they discovered the bug in production, and then you're like, "Oh yeah, but I thought this was it," right? So you don't want to be that kind of a foolish person because you will be held accountable as a QA, right? So always go and clarify, whether it's the project manager, whether it's the your QA lead, whoever that person with the contact, who has those requirements, or who can double check on those things for you. Always go to them and kind of clarify those things as well. So that way there's not going to be any issues, and you kind of getting that weight off of your shoulder of assumptions and things like that. Have that clear list of 1, 2, 3. These are the mock-ups. These are functional requirements, and kind of base your testing off of that.
Yep, that's for sure. I'm completely on the same page, and I feel like this is a good interview question for our students who are learning how to become a QA engineer, because a lot of times they get into a situation where they have requirements, but they don't understand what's happening. They're like, "Am I dumb or just not clear?" And usually they think that they're dumb because they're students. They're like, "Well, maybe that's the right way, and I just cannot understand it. Maybe QA is not my thing." But no, this is the thing. You got to ask. You got to find out what's the truth and never assume.
Don't be afraid to ask questions. That's totally normal. If you feel that you don't understand something, ask. That's fine.
Please. Yeah, that's really good advice. Alrighty, well, let's get to the third one. And can you tell me about a time when you identified a problem with a product that your team did not notice?
All the time. That happens all the time.
So the question was, can you tell me about a time? And your answer is all the time. That makes sense. That's very acceptable.
I mean, it could be from the like QA side, and as well as it can be from the dev side as well. Like, I just recently had an issue. We had an open ticket where the original issue was that we were not able to put an email. So it was supposed to be like a 5-minute testing, just to make sure I can put an email. Well, I started actually putting in email, and I also was like, hey, can I actually put any special characters there, like other than the @? And ended up, yes, you can put whatever over there at that specific field for the email. And I was like, guys, I think we forgot to check that before. And yeah, now it's a huge project for the devs. So I don't know what's going on in the back end, but yeah, it's supposed to be 5-minute testing. Now it's back to the development. So that happens.
Yeah, it's totally, nobody's perfect, right? If we were computers, maybe then it would be a little bit more perfect, but we're humans and we're prone to errors, and so at any point in time, I think if you do find it, you can easily address it, and just address it from the way that's not offensive, I should say, and it's more so like, hey, I was just looking at this, and I happened to find this one. Did you already maybe file this bug or something like that, right? Where you ask that question, but that question also lets them know about the issue, and they might say, hey, oh yeah, I totally forgot. Thanks for catching that, right? Versus if you're a really direct person, you say, hey, you forgot this, right? And that sounds really offensive, and everybody's gonna be like,
Yeah.
whoa, why are you accusing me of this? So having that proper approach to whenever you find some sort of issue, I think that's also really important to consider.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Alrighty, well, how do you guys prioritize testing tasks when there are competing demands? So pretty much, what are you going to test if there are other priorities?
Well, personally speaking, right, I always have a list of priorities, right?
Mhm.
So if there's other priorities, right, everything is important, right? We can say, no bug is not important, but certain things are more important than others, right? So I always like to say, hey, I always have a list of, priorities, and they are ranked by the level, right? This is the highest priority, this is second highest priority, this is third priority, right? So I always work from that top-down approach. I first tackle that's the thing that's most critical, right, to the functionality of the application, if it's critical to the timing of like the release or something like that. And then I kind of make my way down. So I think that's kind of like the best way to really go about it, because then they'll say, okay, this person doesn't think that everything is important. He's actually able to say, okay, this is pushing, this is like on fire, we need to fix this, or you need to test this or something like that. And then you just go ahead and, tackle those things first, and then you tackle everything else after that. So that's how I go about it typically.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. I was thinking about when you were talking about it, I just came up with an idea of testing cake, not a testing pyramid, but testing cake. The cake in a shape of pyramid, where you take a spoon and you eat it from the top. The highest priority, you quickly grab it from the top, and then you go to the lower priority and lower until you run out of time. And we have no time. The lowest priority cannot necessarily be tested all the time. So you simply let it go and test it when you have a chance, or you bring other resources available. You would talk to your team and ask, hey, since I have a really high priority, is anyone else available? Or maybe talk to your leader or manager. Is anyone available to help me out? Because this is high priority. This ring sound is not a high priority. Let me turn it off. This is high priority and that is high priority. And we got to get both done. So I need it. And, you can always come to your manager and say, hey, those are really high priorities. Can you actually help me out to get resources or to tell me which one would you like me to skip for today? Because we have no time for that.
I also want to mention that I work with the team that switching priorities like almost every day. It's just the way how our team operates. We're the mobile team and we have different operation system plus issues from our customers. So for us, every day on the stand-up, like we talking to our devs and engineering manager and our manager and saying, okay, today, what do you want us to concentrate on? Because there are some issues that, for example, it's number one priority today because we have to do it today because it's an issue for a customer, for a big customer. So we have to drop everything off and, start QAing, the issue. So that's also one of the things that, making sure that you actually follow up with the team at the same time and making sure that the thing that you think is a priority is still a priority.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. Can you describe a time when you had to make a difficult decision during the testing? A difficult decision during the testing. I feel like we're making those on a daily basis, aren't we?
I mean, there might not be like life or death decisions, right? But again, it's hard to, it's a really kind of broad question, right? When you say what's the decision, right? But I mean, in my opinion, I think we do make, those decisions every day, but in the sense that everything still comes down, I think, for me, to a priority, right? Whenever I'm tasked with like making some sort of decision about testing, it's always comes down to me like, okay, what's important and what's making the company money and what is the critical functionality? And those are kind of the things for me. That's kind of like the field that I play in, like, and kind of decide what is that difficult decision that, I think I can't think of any other way that I ever approached of making any sort of decision, because at the end of the day, for me, it always comes down to like, what's the top priority, right? And I may be testing something simple, and then something comes around that's more important. Then I switch my focus, right? But other than that, I can't think of anything else that's kind of coming to my head right now.
I can think about a decision I recently had to make is basically to tell our dev team that we're not going to go with a specific feature just because the feature is not fully working on a specific platform and it should work along all platforms. And I said, hey, I want to make sure that all the customers that are using different platforms, all of them have the same experience. We can't really say, oh, okay, the ones who are using Windows, they're going to have this feature, but the ones who are using, like, for example, iPads are not going to do that. But I had to say from the customer perspective, like hey, as a QA, I don't feel like we should go with this. When we had our retro session, sprint planning session, when we were talking about it. So I think we also need to think from the customer perspective as well. If you need to make a decision, just to say and stay your ground, where you're going to say, hey, I think the specific approach that dev team want to go to is not going to be a good approach for the customer. Because I think as a QA, we're kind of like are supporting our customers and trying to make the best experience for them.
Yeah, customer oriented.
I actually have a question that came up during interview with PayPal, and they said, well, imagine you're the only QA and developers are putting out fires somewhere, the project manager is on vacation, and you find a bug before the release. What would you do, right? And you have to decide how critical this bug is, and like basically have the last word on it. Is this gonna get shipped as is, or are we gonna stop the release for this bug and we're just gonna have like some other code, right? And I was sitting there, I was like, it's a good question. And I tried poking and saying, hey, well, so I have really nobody. And they're like, yeah, just imagine you're the only person who has to make this decision. I said, ultimately, again, I would assess the risk, right? If this hypothetically scenario, right? If the application requires you to log in and we're not able to log in, there's no way in hell we're shipping it. But then if I said, if it's some sort of like low priority, low severity thing where it's just like color is off a little bit somewhere, right? And it's not quite matching the mockup in that way, I say, yeah, that's totally shippable, right? So always assess the risk and the functionality and how critical it is to the application, and then kind of base your decision off that. But I remember answering that question. He's like, "Oh yeah, that's totally valid," because again, you have that high severity, high priority. You have low priority, low severity, right? Yeah, you have to be able to kind of navigate that and make that decision accordingly.
Yep, 100% agree. Alrighty, let's move on to the next one. Can you tell me about a time when you had to deal with the conflicting priorities or expectations from the different stakeholders? By the way, does anyone want to explain what are the stakeholders or who are the stakeholders? Because I'm pretty sure not a lot of people will know that.
Yeah, for me, stakeholders, it's typically the customers, right? Over at Fortress, our stakeholders are pretty much the properties that we're onboarding, right? And they request different features and they tell us to work on different bugs. So essentially, they are kind of driving our development and kind of the route which we're going. And in different companies, they could be stakeholders, can just be the people at the top, right? So it really depends, but it's essentially these are the people who are driving the direction of development or fixing things.
Yep, that's true. That's true. And on my end, about 6 years ago, when I worked for one of the self-service companies in the USA, easy to guess, the stakeholders were managers, engineering managers, IT managers, et cetera, and directors, that level people. So once again, it depends, but those, as Anton mentioned, those are the people who are driving pretty much priorities for the team. So have you ever had to deal with the conflicting priorities or expectations? Because in my experience, it's kind of an interesting question, because I never had one like this, but if I would bring those two stakeholders together, give both of them a bottle of beer. I'm just kidding. And tell them to figure it out, because we got to find out what exactly is more important for us. Not necessarily between them, but between us, three of us. I would throw my ideas. I would talk to them. But what do you guys think?
I think the same thing. I mean, we kind of, because in my company, we actually working with the schools, with the school district. We did have an issues when, for example, we would get a request for a specific feature, and then we have to decide, can we deliver this feature? How long it's going to take to deliver this feature? How much money it's going to cost to deliver that? And would it even be like reasonable? Because since we're working with different school districts, it can be just one request from one school district, but would it actually benefit, others from the other states as well? So I think you gave the right answer by, talking and see, like, is it really worth it or not?
Yeah, because we're the team. We got to figure it out together. It's not like one person is responsible, other is not. Our goal is to grow the business and keep customers happy while we're doing that. So we all have one goal. We just got to figure it out between all of us. Alrighty, let me put the check mark on that question and move on to the next one. How do you handle a situation where there is a difference in opinions between you and a developer or a product owner? That sounds like Ella. Not sure why, but that sounds like her.
I am I always have my opinion on things. But to be honest, I'm very lucky because at the company that I work for right now, we have a very close relationships with my team, with the devs. I don't have any issues with reaching out to the dev directly, the one that is actually working on a ticket. So But yeah, of course, I have a lot of disagreements sometimes, but we are the team, so we'll schedule a meeting where everyone can actually come and talk about it. If it's something big, if I cannot actually talk, if I need to, I can actually talk directly to the dev and describe like what my position, why I think it's an issue, or not an issue, or it's a problem or not a problem. But sometimes you have to talk with the whole team to decide together. Communication, that's the key, communication. And I also want to put that you always need to be friendly, polite, and yeah, that's very important in the work environment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, having differences with a developer and project manager are like, I think they're totally separate things, at least in my opinion. And the way that I have experienced it in my workplace, typically differences with developers are like, is this a bug, right? Is this how we're supposed to test it? And then, I never had actual differences with project managers, because those are like the people I look up to, because they are, living and breathing that project from like the very beginning, when it just starts, whether it's a feature, whether it's some like other part of functionality. They are the kind of like the man or the woman, and you able to go to them. At least for myself, I would always go to project manager for any sort of needs. And there was times that I would suggest certain things, but never actually have conflict with them. I feel like project managers are not really, typically they're not like your boss, they're not your manager. So it's, for me, I never had any sort of conflict with them. And with developers, yeah, you can have sort of differences in the way that you should test something, or different permutations and looking at it from the particular angles and things like that. Yeah, from my side of things, the project manager, I would always have some sort of maybe suggestion. Hey, maybe we forgot to consider this test case, and I see you wrote out the requirements, but maybe we're forgetting this. And it would be more like a fluid conversation that way, instead of having, some sort of differences.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting enough, because in my company, it's not like that, really. We kind of have, in our company, our PMOs, our product managers usually have a lot of project in mind. And sometimes it's more that we can really deliver. And we do sometimes have to have like big meetings where we need to say, hey, yeah, that's awesome. That's an awesome project. That's cool. But hey, we don't have any workforce right now to finish the specific task or switch to this project, or this project actually took longer than we actually anticipated. So, I guess it depends.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because from my experience, at least from my professional work experience, and from the last experience, I would say it's particularly, we had the project manager who was just assigned to our project. So they were involved in that project alone. They were not like a, jack of all trades, jumping from feature to feature to functionality. And that's why I kind of, from my experience, to say, hey, this is the person that I go to, because, they're right there at the top and they know everything, every moving element about this project. But I guess it also depends like what kind of team structure you have, right? So every company has different team structures, and therefore your answer can also vary in that regard.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, that it will be great, amazing experience for people with no experience to watch this video, because they're like, hold on, who's right, Anton or Ella? For certain, because everyone has a different opinion and everyone has a different story, and those are actual stories from the life experience. That's not something you came up with. And in my case, project managers, mostly they were the people who would come and just double check, hey, is the project still moving? Hey, how can we move it forward? How can we push it faster? And a product owner would be the person who you would look up to, in my case, at least lately at Board and Verizon and some other companies. The product owner would be the person who owns the product, who owns the feature, who actually tells developer what needs to be fixed, how it needs to be fixed. But as Anton and Ella did say, that you could always give them an advice what you think would be the best. But they are the people who are making decisions, although we gather as a team, and based on our conversations, they make decisions. But once again, it is my experience, and Ella and Anton had a different experience. Alrighty, that was quite an interesting question that everyone's going to enjoy. And by the way, if anyone else who's going to be watching this interview will have different experience, please mention it in the comment below. I want to hear that, because I want to hear what are the possible structures, any ways of experiencing difficult situations between developers, product owners, project managers, Anton, Ella, and Sergey. Awesome. Moving forward. How do you approach testing products with a large number of features or complex functionality?
Task planning. You have to plan how you're going to do that. Task planning, it's the #1 rule.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I cannot agree more with that, because one of the companies that I was working for, particularly their subscription process, contained so many different permutations, and permutations essentially meaning there's so many different ways that a customer would be pointed. Like, for example, if you say, I want to select, there's 2 options, and you want to select the first option. So on the next page, you're going to be presented with different options. And then what you select on the next page is going to show you the next different options on the other page. So it's like a web of, like, if you select this one, and then it's going to show you this one and another one, right? So there's different permutations. And what helped me the most was having the test cases, right? So, test, I know test first option on this page, first option on this page, first option on another page, right? And kind of like trickling down that way. But yeah, test cases are like the most critical thing, because I feel like and I was relatively new, I joined the company, I had to start automating. If I didn't have those test cases in place, I would be like, okay, like I have to sit there and, sometimes you have to do it yourself, right? Come up with those test cases and do the manual testing first, and then write out the test cases. But let's say, given the fact that you have the test cases in place, refer to those, and, that's how you're gonna really understand what are the different permutations of whatever you're doing and things like that. And that's, if you have a really complex product, right, which was part of the question, if you have a large number of things that are happening, what I like to say is, you as a human being are not going to be able to remember 100% of the time 100% of test cases, right? But what will remember it is the test case management system. You input it there, and you don't have to sit and guess, did I test this? Did I come up with the automation script for this one, for that one, right? Yeah, test planning, that's kind of to the core.
Let's go, test planning. Yeah, and always, if it's a large number of features and a complex functionality, you would discuss it with the team as well. Because sometimes, even from my experience, I remember that sometimes my team would be kind of slow on things, and then for a while would be developing a large amount of features and not releasing them, and then automation wouldn't be in place, so I would have to talk to other team members to make sure that we can have enough resources to help to support this release, so not only me but someone else would be available to help. So large, as someone said, difficult questions cannot have easy answers.
That's a good one.
Alrighty, moving on. Next one, can you describe a time when you had to explain a testing issue or a result to a non-technical stakeholder? Honestly, when someone asks you a question on an interview and you do not know an answer, or you do not have a case in your head, I will say I did not, because most of my stakeholders, they were technical. Never had such a situation, but if I would try to explain it in a human, understandable examples by using non-technical language. And actually, ChatGPT could help you with that.
I mean, I used to work in IT support, so I used to actually teach like like, for example, elderly people, how to use their computer, for example. So you have to, let them know what you need to do, right click or left click. That's still the question that makes me, nervous. So yeah, I mean, you just need to explain what the issue is, just not using technical words, I guess. Just simple, like how you're describing to a child, for example.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Use examples. Use associations. Alrighty. Sounds like Anton does not have any as well.
So no, I didn't want to add anything because it really, what you said in the beginning, I think it would make sense. Although insurance company, there are some people who are product managers and they're not necessarily technical people, right? My company, the person came from ex-developer and then more transitioned into the business side of things, and they became PM, and therefore they knew the lingo. But some people don't, and I think there's really no right or wrong answer to this one. Everybody's experience varies, so you could say, no, I never had that. Everybody was technical, or you can say, no, the person, my PM, right? And you will also be right because it happens. So
yeah. Also, you mentioned the name Sharon a couple of times. I'm pretty sure not a lot of people know who she is, but can you tell us who she is? And next time I'll try to bring her for an interview.
Sounds good. Well, Sharon is my girlfriend. She's also a QA. So we got a QA family. We have a dog. He might become a QA eventually. So yeah. So sorry, maybe like some people might have seen the videos, but I'm not sure if she was ever actually on like.
She was on a picture.
She wasn't like on the thumbnail. I remember, but yeah, she's my girlfriend.
Perfect. Yeah, we're gonna add the video that Anton is talking about right here or right there, and then yeah, Anton and Sharon, is our first Codemify QA family that had successfully graduated. So they were the first ones. Hopefully we're going to shoot a video with Sharon soon. And by the way, I remember some people who were born in America asking, hey, why are you guys having all Eastern Europeans and people from all over the world, but not from the US? What's the trick? And Sharon is American. She is, well, her heritage is from Italy, but she's American. So we're going to bring her for an interview. And then I'm going to say, now guys, you see an American on this channel.
Well, there's a very fine line there because she was born in Italy, right? But her mom is American, right? But with Italian heritage, right? So she's 100% Italian, but depending which way you're looking at it, right? You can say she's American. Honestly, when we met in college, I was like, Sharon, this is the last person I would think would have like an Italian to have that name, right? Because you say Sharon, it's pretty American, but yeah, she's Italian to the core. Even the attitude. So
all right. Not gonna bring her for an interview then. Just kidding. Cool. Moving forward. How do you ensure that your testing is comprehensive and covers all possible scenarios? I can actually pick that one because there's something called test matrices or test matrices. Matrices?
Matrices, probably.
Probably,
like a matrix, right? That's
like a test matrix that which could describe what tasks are covering, what functionality, and actually what functionality is covered. I think that one would be the best, but there are also quite a few things we could add here. Number one, that every company will have different times for writing test cases. In a previous company, a couple of companies ago that I worked for, we would have bi-weekly release cycles, and right after the release we would go through all of the tickets, through all the changes that were made, and we would update or write new test cases in a test case management system. But every company would have a different times for it, and some companies you would be a lot behind. In other companies we wouldn't even have a test cases. We would write automation right after the release, and we would have daily releases. So we release 2 tickets, and by the morning, I got to automate between 2 to 8 test cases and have them have a PR created, have them merge ASAP. So every company will have a different kind of mindset for that, but let me know what you guys have.
Yeah, I mean, it's same in my team. We actually didn't have test cases, any test cases for a pretty long time because we had a product that needs to be tested right now and right here. So we were actually, just collaborating all together and see like, okay, let's make sure we cover every possible scenario. And also what we did is ask a team member from a different QA team, and ask them to also look at the product and see if there is something that, for example, we missed. Because a new pair of eyes can actually see more sometimes if it comes to manual testing, for example.
Oh, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Alrighty, moving forward. Next one, can you give me an example of a time when you had to adapt your testing approach due to the change in requirements or a timeline? That sounds like Ella.
Can you repeat the question one more time? It was so long. I lost it in the middle.
Sure. Can you give an example of a time when you had to adapt your testing approach due to change in the requirements or timeline?
That's an interesting question as far as the testing approach.
Yeah, due to in requirements or timeline. And actually, if you want to take time to think about it, I can answer it because I got something.
Go ahead.
Sure. Once upon a time in 2017, approximately, I've been working for the cell service company in the US, and then we wanted to release a big feature in 2 months. So I had enough time to write automation. I was like, let me automate the hell out of it, and then we're gonna successfully release it with no issues and a quick automation test only. But the things have changed, and then we decided to release it in 3 weeks instead. So I had no time for automation. So pretty much testing approach did change because I completely went from automation into manual testing only, and I had to ask for an extra resources to help me out to have a test case coverage for it. So because that was quite a critical function features and functionality.
I had a vice versa situation where we actually started asking to give us more time to doing automation because we decided that, yeah, hey, the manual testing is actually taking a lot. And we're really, since we have different platforms, it takes like even more time. So we actually started ask our team, can you please give us time to do some automation? Can we please start automating our test cases, please? Which is not always happening because of the amount of priorities and work that we have. But we actually decided that we're going to take 1 day a week and only do automation, nothing else. Like we don't exist for anything else. We only exist for automation.
That's the way.
Yeah, no, I don't really have anything to add. I think both of your answers were really solid.
Sounds good. Moving on. Can you tell me about the time when you identified a potential security vulnerability during testing? And I remember that I did have one. I can probably get started with it. So during that time, I've been testing user interface field validation, something like email, for example, password fields. And then on the side, I was doing not only the UI validation of those fields, but also an API. And I found that there was a UI validation for the field, but through the API, you could send anything you want, and you could crash the server with that. But UI would have a cool defense. It would simply tell you, hey, you cannot do special characters, you cannot do this. But through an API, you can do all sort of SQL injections and things like that. So that was a huge vulnerability, which was quickly fixed. But UI versus an API, that will be an answer to this question from my end.
Yeah, I don't have really many specific examples either.
In one of my companies, we had once an issue where basically you could log into your personal page without even putting a password. So yeah, it was just a bug. Yeah, thanks God we actually tested right away. We found it right away. but we found it after release. So
Oh boy.
yeah, it was bad. It was bad, but thanks God we were able to quickly address it and fix it.
Were you a QA on that one, Eleanor?
No, that was not me. That was
For
not me.
sure.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, all right, all right. Let's move on. How do you ensure that your testing is inclusive and covers a diverse range of user scenarios? I think we've discussed that one in a different manner if that
Yeah.
was already. So can you describe a time when you had to manage testing project with limited resources?
I did because it's actually two QA in my specific team. I mean, we have a big QA team in general, but we divide it by the products. And in my product team, it's only me and my coworker. So when either of us actually taking a vacation, it's only one person left. So and usually we, for some odd reason, if we're taking vacations, it's more than a week. So yeah, I would just let the team know, like, hey, I have a limited capacity. I have my own tickets, plus I need to make sure that all my, my coworkers' tickets are also foreseen. They're not forgotten or something. So yeah, I'll let the team know. I will probably reach out if it's something urgent and I know I cannot make it. I need to be honest with myself as well, if I can or cannot, and just reach out to like QA lead or manager and just let them know, hey, can I please get someone to help? Because like I have this and I just don't have enough capacity or time to fix it or to test it. So I think it's very important to basically always evaluate what you can do and what you cannot, and do not promise more that you can really do. I think that's one of the big problems for the newbies when they try, I can do this and I can also do that and I can also take that project. Nope, it's usually not happening. So
I'm still a newbie.
No, yeah, what you said, Eleanor, is definitely valid. And for me, I feel like every time I said I can do it, I would end up working 12, 14 hours a day, and then it's just like, then, your girlfriend says, I think you're working a little too much. Be like, hey, I promised this, I got to deliver on it, right? So don't put yourself in that situation. Like Eleanor said, be conservative, right? With just a little bit of effort on top of it, in the sense that we're a little bit, not effort, but probably the word would say extra on top of it, where you can say, hey, I'm projecting to do, X many test cases, for example, or automating 10 tests in 1 week. But that's very conservative estimate, right? And just don't put yourself in the bigger shoes than you really can get into, because then you make yourself look bad, because you give them promises and timelines and numbers, and then once you don't hit those numbers, they're like, yeah, but you said that, right? And it's always better to underpromise and overdeliver than overpromise and underdeliver, right?
Yeah, for sure. Plus 100. Alrighty. Then, can you tell me about a time when you had to work under pressure to meet a tight deadline? I feel like that's always the deal, isn't it?
Sometimes more than others, right? But yeah, I think I even got asked a similar question or a similar nature question when I was at PayPal, when I was interviewing for PayPal, and they said, what if there's something that's super critical that you need to finish, and your like working hours are officially over, right? You did your 8 hours or however many hours. And, I would say, I would just stay and finish it, right? And whether it's going to take me 10, 11, 12 hours, I'm going to put in that work and not potentially sabotage my team or the project or whatever it is we're working on. And, then we can figure out how we can maybe leave next day an hour earlier or something like that. And companies are typically nowadays are very aware of those things. Like if you're put in so many extra hours after work, and then they'll say, hey, take a couple hours off next day, right?
Yeah.
But typically I would like to say, yeah, I would definitely stick to it. I would put in extra hours and, whether it's extra cups of coffee, but I'll make sure to get it done. That kind of shows the interviewer that, okay, this person is not lacking the effort, and they're able to stick it out for the team.
Yep, 100% agree. There are two types of people.
I think it's a very popular question, actually. How you can actually work under the pressure and tight deadlines.
Yeah, and you always say, easy, I can do that.
You always say, yeah, I'm ready for it. I like it. I like challenges.
And you just take a sick day, right?
That's what you say.
Just kidding. Just kidding. All right, guys.
Actually, hold on. I want to add something that came into my head. When we asked that question, or when you were being asked that question, can you tell me the time when you had to work under pressure? What typically happens is, when you have so many things to juggle and, the deadline is approaching, some people get really frantic and lost and all these things. So I think if you say that you also stay organized, and making sure that you kind of have your ducks in line, and then it's just a matter of time for you to, fit into that deadline, but making sure you stay organized, because so many people would just go like mayhem, and they have this project right here, another project right here, and they're not really knowing how to properly prioritize and organize. And I think those are really important. So kind of structure your answer in that way, and include organizing it, because I think that's really the key.
I think it's also very important to mention and not forget that we also have quality at the beginning of our job position. Yeah. And it's also very important to mention that sometimes when we're trying to run for the very tight deadline, we forget about the quality. So I think it's also very important to mention when you have an interview process that, yes, definitely stay organized. But if you know that this specific feature needs some, more time to spend on it, and making sure that we provide good quality, high quality product to our customers, we need to make sure, because we also, we need to not to forget that we need to provide a good quality service.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Quality first. All righty. Next one, how do you ensure that your testing is accessible to users with disabilities or special needs?
That's very interesting, because, for example, I know companies, it's different for each company. In some companies, they do it in home. Some companies actually hire third-party companies that do the accessibility testing for them. Because you have to have a specific training actually to make sure that you can do the accessibility testing. It's not that easy. So yeah, I think it depends. So if you have to do that to your work and you don't have an experience, you need to be honest with it and ask if there is a training that they can provide, or pay for your training to do the accessibility testing.
Yeah, I never had to do any sort of accessibility testing in my career either.
Yep. +1 to what Tesla. Hella said.
Did you really just call me Tesla? Okay.
So you probably got like
you are Tesla chart pulled up of a QA world. It was a compliment.
Okay.
I completely agree with what Ella just said. It depends on the requirements, and it depends on the company, because in my experience, we've also hired other teams to do accessibility testing and actually implemented. I don't remember who did implementation, but accessibility testing was done by the outsourced team. Alrighty, next one. Can you give me an example of a time when you had to collaborate with the remote team members or teams located in a different time zone?
All the time. I mean, my whole company works in the whole United States, and we also actually have employees in India as well. So you just need to make sure that you, for example, like all our meetings usually in the morning, because it's morning for Pacific for us here in California, and it's actually day for people in East Coast.
Yeah.
So usually all the meetings, something important usually always happen in the morning.
Yep. Same story in my end. But sometimes I would have to jump if there is a release, and if your entire testing team is somewhere in India or somewhere in Eastern Europe, and there is a release happening and there is no one to support it, you have to support it yourself and then stay up late until they wake up to not only send them a message by describing the situation and the needs, but also talking to them so they could ask you follow-up questions in case they ever have. That rarely happened, but that did happen as well.
Sometimes you have to be flexible when it comes to it.
Oh, yeah. All right. Can you describe a time when you had to troubleshoot a complex technical issue during testing? Complex. Hold on, we had something similar, didn't we?
I don't think so, but that's a really an interesting question, because I'm thinking, is he talking about a complex technical issue with, the functionality, or are we talking about something even wrong with your environment, right? And in this time, right, I would ask, hey, could you elaborate, what exactly are you talking about? Because I might start talking about, oh yeah, my server stopped running and I couldn't figure out how to, do it. And the interviewer might be asking us about something regarding the functionality of the application, right? So what's your take on this one? What are you talking about, Sergey?
Yep, that's a great question. Let's talk about your testing, about your testing generally. So complex issue with, let's talk about it both. Let's talk about the environment first, so people will know.
Yeah. I mean, for me, certain things that would happen, for example, the server stops running and I'm trying to do something on UI, right? And all of a sudden it crashes, right? And then I have to go into VS Code and see, okay, is my server running? And I need to, see if my Docker containers are running, or whatever powers up your environment. Or even if you have, let's say, testing something that requires particular environment variables, right? You might have certain environment variables that are outlined for you in a ticket, or the dev passes to you, and you forget about them and you're testing and you're like, yeah, I'm not getting what you're telling me, or I'm not seeing what I'm supposed to be seeing. And then you're like, oh, okay, I need to go into my env file and add these things and restart the server. And yeah, I think those are kind of, I would say, not complex. They're not complex after you know what's going on, but yeah, while you're in it, it's like, what the heck is going on? You could spend, 30 minutes, an hour trying to figure it out, and it's as simple as an environment issue. And for testing, if we're talking about some sort of complex thing, I can't think of anything off the top of my head except trying to figure out why is this button, when I click on it, is not working. Then I kind of started going down, figuring out is this button tied to anything, right? Is it supposed to take me somewhere? I'll go look at the API call and figure out what's the response I'm getting from this. So I wouldn't say it's complex, but that's probably kind of the closest thing that resonates in my head right now.
Yeah, and it's a very abstract question, because you could think about it in quite a few different ways. So you should always double check and ask follow-up questions. What do you exactly mean? Can you give me an example? Can you elaborate? All right, sounds like we're moving forward. Next one, how do you approach testing new technology or unfamiliar software tools? That's a good one.
You just go for it. You just go for it. You start testing on your own. You just open it. You just start clicking, trying, go to the different directions. You need to fully, dig in. To it and see what it is. If it's a different environment, it doesn't even matter. You just need to start testing, really start testing, how you do anything else. I don't see how different it is from anything else, to be honest.
Yeah, I definitely was asked that once also on the interview question. And I typically when you transition from company to company, it's typical to find, that every company, companies are not going to use the same tech stack, and you always have to learn some sort of new tool. So for me, I found the best way is one, for example, if I'm switching a company, that's the tool that they're using, I'm not having used it before, I would kind of connect with, like, let's say, who's the best person in the company to connect in regards to this tool, like who's the master of this, right? I would try to talk to them, because if, like, let's say they're my teammate, and we're using some sort of framework or something like that, I would say, hey, like, can you give me a brief rundown, like what's different between Axios and Supertest? For that's the API frameworks, right? Mm-hmm. And you get that like person-to-person interaction first in the human language, and then I would go into like documentation, looking at different YouTube videos and things like that. But my first approach is go to the person. If given that there's a resource like that available for you on your team in your company, and go documentation, YouTube video, or whatever else resource you think is fit.
Mm-hmm. Yep, for sure. I'll quote Andrew, one of our QA students from the past. Read the official documentation. Whenever you're learning new tool, new language, read the official documentation. Whenever you're jumping on the new technology or approaching testing new technology, also read the documentation about it and ask questions, as we always do, pretty much. Same answer. Alrighty. Can you tell me about a time when you had to investigate a reported issue that was difficult to reproduce? I'll probably pick this one if you don't mind, because that's quite a common one.
Take it away, sir.
Yeah, that's quite a common issue where someone else reported an issue and you're having problems to reproduce it. Number one, you do your best to understand it. Number two, you are double checking with the person. You're asking the person who had reported that question, hey, can you elaborate on the steps to reproduce, because they are not clear, or can you update it? You can directly ask that person. If that person is not available, you could talk to, if it's another team and for some reason you are testing someone else's tickets or another team's feature that you're not familiar with, and that person is not there to explain it, talk to product owner. Talk to project manager if that's the person who knows it better. Talk to a developer if only dev is available. Talk to another QA team member from that team who knows that product or feature better than you. That'll be my take on it. How about you guys?
No, yeah, that makes sense.
All right.
Unless there's been times that customer reports an issue and you just can't reproduce it. You're sitting there 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and you're like, okay, how critical is this? And you say, okay, let's see if it happens again. If it's just like a one-off thing and you're spending too much time trying to reproduce this thing, it's a waste of company's resources. It's a waste of your resources, particularly your time. So if it's something that's a one-off thing and you're spending on it a couple hours and you say, yeah, it's probably, kind of let's let it go and see if it happens again, and then kind of look into it much deeper after that.
Yeah. Again, from my technical perspective, from my technical experience, sometimes you just cannot duplicate it whatsoever, just because people can have different types of environments that you really cannot have at work. Like, you don't really have any sources for that. So sometimes, but you definitely need to get as much information as you can regarding like what they use, what the environment, the problem is actually happening at.
Yep. And on the top, you should kick their butt for not putting all of the needed information in the ticket. And so next time they would know to do that.
Yes, exactly.
Alrighty. And the next one, how do you ensure that your testing is aligned with overall product goals and user needs?
Requirements. I don't know. For me, requirements are always king. Like that's just kind of the most solid answer that I always jump into and say, hey, that's the requirements, right? Customers are always going to tell you, hey, we want this, we want that, and the requirements might be constantly changing. And it is for the person who handles those requirements, it could be a QA lead or it could be a project manager, to maintain the requirements documentation, to make sure that any sort of deviation is, it's documented, and, we're testing accordingly, right? Because if customers are emphasizing certain things, or stakeholders, whoever you want to say, and we still have the old documentation, all the requirements, then it's like, okay, now we're going to two separate directions. So yeah, requirements for me.
Say, there's nothing to add to what Anton just said. So
Yep, +1. Anton, you got it. Alrighty. Can you describe a time when you had to manage conflicting priorities with your testing team? So your team wants you to test something, but you're like, I got my own task, guys. Not gonna happen.
I had a situation like that. Again, it's a communication. You're just letting them know, like, hey, team, I would love to help, but unfortunately right now, I have some other tasks that are the priority for me right now and for my team, for example. It all depends on the priority, and it all depends how much you can handle. Again, sometimes you maybe want to take more and work, and to maybe work some overtime to help your team, because again, team building, it's all about the team. So yeah, but if you know that you just cannot do that, just be honest with it and communicate. My main thing is just don't promise something that you cannot deliver. That's my thing. Because I had issues with that before in different companies, where people would say, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and then forget. And then you're like, hey, what's going on? So
Yep, agreed. All right, and the next one. Can you tell me about a time when you had to test a feature or a product that was controversial or potentially problematic? Yeah, I'll probably start with if it's a product there is controversial or problematic, this conversation should have happened during the sprint planning with your product owner or the project manager, developers, and the designers, because if that's the product related, it should have been discussed way before and planned way before it gets to the testing point.
Yeah.
Nothing to add.
Thumbs up, sir. Thumbs up.
Perfect.
All right, killed it. Moving forward to the next one.
You just give a compliment to yourself, right? Just
killed it. Good job, Sergi. How do you ensure that your testing is efficient and does not result in unnecessary duplication of efforts? Okay,
Eleanor, that's your favorite word. You gotta say it. Come on.
Test planning.
Communication. Come on. Yeah. You take that one. You take that one. I'm not even gonna try it.
How do you ensure that your testing is efficient and does not result in unnecessary duplication of efforts? I'll actually take it because this in some way could possibly require improvement of the testing processes of the QA team, because most of the time QA team simply plans out the day and then they do the testing, and but a lot of teams are starting to moving their tasks into Jira projects and creating separate boards for the QA team, where team members would create a ticket to whenever they would work on a task. So you would get to the QA board, you would see what other people are working on, and that's the way number one, how you would duplicate testing efforts, because you would know that such a person is already automating this task. You would know that such a person is running regression for the release 403. You would know that such a person is doing some testing efforts on the other end or writing test cases for that functionality. So you would not duplicate it. And also, on a daily basis, teams have not sprint plannings, but daily syncs where they where they talk about what they've done yesterday, what they're planning to do today, and if they have any blockers. So you would also specify during that sync, and this is the way to avoid unnecessary duplication of an effort.
Yeah, and but you also, I mean, during the sprint planning, you also assign tickets. I mean, I don't know how that, I mean, I guess it's everywhere. I mean, that my experience, it always be like that, where you actually will assign tickets and you know what your job is for the specific sprint. So you know that you're not doing something unless it's change of priority and something changed. But again, communication, I guess, you know, just to make sure you're all on the same page.
Yep.
Yep. Moving forward. All right. Can you tell me about a time when you had to learn a new technology or a software tool tricky for testing purposes? Oh, quickly for testing purposes. So you had to learn a new tool or technology really quick for testing purposes.
I kind of did, that was for the accessibility, actually. We were basically testing, it's kind of like, what you call it, not extension, not a anyways, that's a specific program, let's put it this way, that do the accessibility testing for you on the page. It's basically checking the page and telling you like, hey, this is what you need to change for accessibility. And what I did, I just basically, that a company had the YouTube learning videos, and I just quickly watch them and see how to use that too. Of course, if they had a documentation, but I guess YouTube video was much faster because they were showing you right away over there, you know, and that was from the company that providing that program. So yeah, that's how I did it.
About 6 years ago, I had an interview with the GOAT, a company that sells sneakers, shoes. And they gave me a challenge to write API test automation framework from scratch in Ruby. In Ruby. And I never, or something else. I think it was in Ruby. And I never learned Ruby. I was a jazz guy. I was also pretty much always a jazz person. And then I was like, okay, let me figure it out. So they gave me 2 days, but I think I did it within 4 hours. But the 3 hours was installation process because I had to install Python on my Mac, and download and installation took realistically 3 hours. And then it took me an hour to create an automation framework from scratch and automate five APIs. And what I did during the 3 hours of wait time, I simply created very easy to read automation framework in a JavaScript. I sent it to them while I was doing installation. I said, hey guys, while I'm doing installation on Ruby, it just takes really time. So first I did in Jazz, just in case you want to see how I do it in Jazz. I emailed it to them. And then after I finished the installation, I did it in Ruby, and I've also emailed it to them. That was my take on the learning tools quickly. I guess it's about, it will be about the speed of learning of different people, and also the approach, because since I already had experience in the different programming languages, learning another language or creating framework, you just read the documentation, as Andrew said, official documentation, which maybe read another article if there is not enough, but official documentation is the best one to go through. And with enough experience, you can do it with a matter of hours.
And it's also about the research. Unfortunately, I find out that a lot of people don't know how to use Google. And it's a very useful thing to know. Now it's actually a skill to use Google. So just do research.
Yeah, and ask another skill, which is going to be very similar to how to use Google, is how to use ChatGPT.
That's right.
Yesterday, one of our students got an interview challenge, and she called me. She was like, I don't know how to write unit tests. I'm like, do you have a function that you have to write unit tests for? Yes. Just paste it into ChatGPT and say, hey, write unit tests for it. I did it on my own. It gave me 3 or 4 tests right away. And it did it in the Mocha way. Pretty much, it beautifully gave me an outline unit tests. And then if you want to update them, you update them, but they're fully ready to go.
Am I the only one person that didn't do anything in ChatGPT? Am I? Okay. Bye. Yes.
All right. Moving forward. How do you ensure that your testing is scalable and can handle increased user traffic or volume?
I guess it's going to be a performance testing and load testing.
Done. Yep, that is correct. And I think this question wouldn't be necessarily be related to manual testing anyhow, but mostly to automation in a way of using performance testing tools and load testing tools. For JavaScript, it would be K6, if I'm not mistaken. That's the easy one to go through. By the way, thanks to Andrew who found that tool. Andrew, we still remember you. Yeah, I don't think manual testing would be related to it anyhow, right?
I mean, nah, not really. I mean, unless you have a huge QA team and all of you will try to do something simultaneously, I guess. I don't know, but no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I would double check on this question with the person who asks it, but because maybe they are talking about feature, the team, not a team, actual functionality is getting bigger and bigger really quickly, and you got to make sure that there will be someone to support it. But once again, it's easier to hire an automation engineer and just automate things quickly.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Let's go through 6 more questions. I'm going to call it for today. All right. Can you describe a time when you had to deal with unexpected issues or challenges during testing? How did you approach solving problem? Can you
Didn't we cover that about like having some sort of troubleshooting like issues or something like that?
Yeah. Let's get it very similar. All right. Well, then question to end on. How do you prioritize your work as the manual QA engineer?
For Anton. Yeah, I guess organization, and again, those are the things that I mentioned throughout this interview. Organization and level of priority, right, that assigned to whatever test cases you're testing. Because when you're manual QA, you're doing all the testing manually, right? And you really want to make sure that whenever you're preparing for some sort of release, that and if you are, against really a deadline and you have to pick and choose, you are able to either refer to your test case documentation where you have, this is like high priority test case to test, right? Or if those things are not indicated in the test case management system, you're just say, okay, you as a person who's working with the application and being an expert in testing, you essentially go through your head and you say, okay, what's critical, what's the priority, right? I think organization priority, again, that's the top of the list. So there's never a point in time I'm going to answer this question differently, because organization and priority is key.
Totally. Same thing. Just be organized.
Yeah.
All right. Then we got another one. What is your approach to collaborating with developers during the testing process? So pretty much, how do you collaborate with devs during your testing process?
I guess the correct answer for this will be through like tickets, for example, like through the Jira ticket where you actually put the comments and tag your dev. I think that's probably would be one of the right answers. It depends on what kind of communication you have with the devs. It could be like an open channel in Slack, for example, where you can also start a conversation about something. I don't think, because I know that there are companies where you shouldn't directly reach out to your dev. Mm-hmm. So maybe if you have any questions and you have a QA lead, you can reach out to your QA lead, discuss the issue, and then they will reach out to the dev. I think it depends on different companies have different approaches on that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, for my company, I had a really tight-knit relationship with developers. So at any point in time during the day, I'd be like, hey, we got to jump on the call. We've got to take a look at this thing. So it was like a right? Okay, cool. Let me send you a Slack, or let me huddle you real quick. So it really depends on the company. Typically, bigger companies that have way more structure are more strict about it, what you said, Eleanor. But smaller companies are typically a little bit more fluid in that regard.
I had an experience where it was almost impossible to reach a dev. So we had to go through our QA manager actually for communication. And I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's probably more for like big companies, for bigger departments versus like smaller companies and startups.
Yeah, in my case, mostly we have a pure, direct communication through the Jira, as Ella mentioned, but also if I will know the release is going to be, at least should be happening tomorrow, and I'm finding an issue, I'm reaching out directly to the guy through Slack and going through this with him or with her, and then I'm asking them to fix it ASAP because the release is tomorrow and this is really critical. Otherwise, we're going to have to postpone a release or kick this ticket out of the release bucket. Alrighty, I think we went through quite a few questions today. I'm hoping that this video is going to satisfy quite a lot of people who are planning to become a QA engineer or who are already QA engineers and want to improve their skills. Anything you guys would like to add to the end, Ella or Anton? Any advices for the future generation of the future QA engineers?
I always say to people who want to join the QA and start going through some interviews, smile. Please smile during the interview. Please, sometimes it's also good to add a little sense of humor to one of your answers, just maybe a little joke, because that's how that interviewer is actually probably going to remember you as well, if you're going to, have a funny moment together. But again, be careful, nothing too much. Just have a very positive attitude, because I really want to mention that sometimes it's not about the technical things. It's about what kind of person you are, what energy you're actually going to bring to the team. Because I actually met managers in my life who were like, hey, I can teach you whatever. Like I can spend time teaching you. But if you're like a bad influence to the team, I won't be able to fix that. So always have your best positive, even if you're not a positive person, but still, please try be positive during the interview. At least smile. So
true. So true.
Yeah, that's really those are the keys. Eleanor, you hit it on the head, nail. Make sure also ask questions that might stand out for the interviewer, right? If they open up the time for you to ask the questions, make sure you don't say, oh yeah, no, I don't have any questions, right? Because that would just show kind of your interest in the company. Could potentially, right? It might not be a 100% true, but typically I always like to ask questions when the time is given. I try to find out, hey, could you tell me a little bit, like, what does the team structure look like, right? What does your tech stack look like? If those are questions that are not previously covered by the interviewer themselves, right? I would ask those questions because that kind of shows my interest. Okay, I really want to know what the team structure is, what are technologies and things like that they're using. So yeah, ask questions, show interest, right? Do your research about the company. Again, ChatGPT is your best friend, because what you can do, and this is what I do, if I'm looking at a particular company and you can look at their website and maybe you're not quite getting what they're all about, you just copy and paste their link into ChatGPT and say, what does this company do? And it's going to tell you exactly what this company does. And you don't even have to think, as sad as it sounds, right? So yeah, I think those are the things that I'm going to close with.
Yep, agreed.
I also want to add one more thing for people, because I also saw that a lot. People who are just moving to United States, or people from different countries, people like any foreigner basically, who maybe not have a pretty good English or have a thick accent. please don't be afraid of it. That's fine. We're all different. And just talk. Just because I saw so many times where people just really want to tell something, but they're so, getting very hesitant about their language, and they don't. So please don't.
Yep. And what I'm gonna do in the future, I'm going to bring Kate, our Russian spy who went through the QA, who took a QA course, who could understand only 10% of the English when we were going through the course. And she finished it in 2 months. She got a QA automation engineer job. Then a year later, she's already doing some API automation testing in another company, and she's switching jobs easily. But her English is still broken. And it's so broken that she's still not even agreeing with me to come for an interview in English. She's like, I'm gonna feel bad. People are gonna see my English. I'm like, you're getting jobs. What the hell are you talking about? That's quite crazy. So I'm gonna try to bring her for an interview. And I just recorded a video with that. I'll send it to her. And hopefully I will attach the link. I'm not sure where I'm going to attach it, but hopefully I'll attach it somewhere here or there, so you guys could see how you can get a job. I mean, how bad can your English be in order to get a job? Well, thank you very much for joining us. It was quite an amazing 1 hour and 30 minutes interview. Woof, we beat the record. Thank you for coming, and I hope to. I'm gonna post the links to your Instagrams, if you don't mind, in the description of this video, so people could message you and ask you if you're a real person. Otherwise, thank you guys for joining, and I'll see you again soon.
Absolutely. Take care, guys.
Bye.
1.5 hours worth of behavioral interview questions. You must have enjoyed it, and you must be a really dedicated person. If you're still here with me, please leave your name, preferably your full name, in the comment below. So I would thank you personally on the next video that we are going to introduce on YouTube. And also, if you ever decide to go for a QA course, don't forget to give us a call at Codemify.com on a contact us page and tell me that you did watch it until the end. I'll give you 10% discount on the top of anything you can possibly find over the internet, because I like dedicated people, as I am very dedicated myself. Regardless, thank you for watching us. Don't forget to give me a big fat thumb up, hit the subscribe button below, and I'll see you next time.